Hello, amazing teachers. Talking about Doctrine and Covenants 132, Plural Marriage, this is a really exciting opportunity for you to be able to point your students toward answers to questions they might have, maybe even questions they've wrestled with and haven't wanted to talk to anybody about. Your classroom should be the place to talk about them. And don't worry, it's not about you having all the answers. It's about you knowing where to send your students to find the resources. At the bottom of the lesson, it's got a great list right there. Where can I learn more about plural marriage in the early days of the church? These articles are fantastic. Back in 2013, the church began producing articles called the Gospel Topics Essays, and you can see the first two here. There are links to them there, and those are highly recommended. However, there's a couple of other ones in here. This one from the New Era, How Can We Explain Polygamy When Someone Asks About It? What a great question. And then a Q&A. So take advantage of the opportunity to know where these resources are. If you have time to familiarize yourself with them, great. Otherwise, make sure that these links can be available if your students are interested in learning more. Also, I would recommend this supplemental learning activity. You know your students, and so I'll just make you aware of this so that if you want to use this resource, that you can. Helping students to understand that some questions are more important to know the answers to than others. I'll let you read through this on your own, but I love the point that Elder Corbridge makes where he says that there are primary questions, like the ones listed here, and then secondary or subordinate questions. And the question on plural marriage is a subordinate question, meaning that if certain other things are not true, it really doesn't matter. So this might be a really helpful perspective for some students, and you may choose to incorporate this at some point in the lesson. Now, let's talk about this beginning attention-getting activity. What a wonderful quote. God has always asked his covenant children to do difficult things. As you share these stories, may I encourage you to help students to understand why these were difficult things. Now, maybe it's obvious looking at Abraham sacrificing Isaac to say, well, of course, that you're sacrificing your child. But enrich that experience for your students. Help them to remember, if they don't know the story, and many of them might not, that Abraham and Sarah had great promises that were given to them, and yet, including posterity. And yet, Sarah gets to the point where she can no longer have children. It's not physically possible for her to have kids. So it would seem that these promises are not fulfilled to the two of them. And then miraculously they are. And then the Lord saying, okay, after I've brought forth and fulfilled these promises miraculously with Isaac, then I'm going to ask you to sacrifice your child. So it's not just the idea of sacrificing a child, but it's also going to destroy the promises of the Lord. It will to Abraham's view, or perhaps to Abraham's view, then with that act, the promises of the Lord will no longer be true. And so, anyway, there's a lot wrapped up in that story. Mary, what an interesting story for Mary. Such a good, virtuous, courageous, and wonderful young woman to be seen because of how the circumstance is. It's not just that she will be the mother of the Son of God. That's big enough. But in her community, in her small town, for them to see this girl who's not married be pregnant, and all the rumors and all the assumptions and stuff associated with that, God doesn't come down and say, hey, everybody, no, this is how I want it to be. No, Mary's got to suffer that. She's got to deal with that, and she's wrongfully accused by those who would think that. And yet that's it. So you can see how it adds to the depth of the difficulty. It's amazing how much God does not do things the way we think things should be done. Even imagine the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He is resurrected and witnessed by some, but the government has its own account of what happened and that it was a scam. So you've got these, it's not a clear-cut thing. It's not like you could just believe the witnesses. There are others that testify, and we know that not truthfully, but the people of the day, they don't know. There's the official government account that says, nope, this is all a scam. We have witnesses. And then there are others say, nope, it really happened. We have witnesses. So if students are pondering a little bit why this is such a challenge, why doesn't God just lay things out clearly? I would offer a couple of thoughts that might be useful. One is that faith is a use of agency, and that in order to have a clear choice, we have to have a compelling reason to believe and a compelling reason not to believe. And only then can we really have a choice. Now, Alma in chapter 32 talks to us about how we have to then make that decision and try an experiment. If we decide to use our agency to follow the compelling reasons for it to be true, then we plant the word inside of us and we see what it does to us, how it changes us. And then if it does, we know that the word is good. So, and then we have more compelling reasons to believe and less compelling reasons not to. Something else that might be useful. In Isaiah 55, verse 8, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways." And he goes on to define that as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. If students in this lesson have a difficult time in wondering how come God seems to want to do things the difficult way, well, this scripture might help them to recognize that we really aren't built to comprehend God's ways. They are higher than our ways, and he has purpose in doing what he does. Now, moving on in the lesson, it has a couple of handouts one handout that helps students to get a little taste of the Gospel Topics essay and examine some truths about plural marriage. But I want to take a look here at these questions. As you might know, we've been talking about how to ask effective questions. I've been sharing with you that to ask and answer questions is at the heart of all learning and all teaching, so says Elder Eyring. That when we take a question, like Joseph Smith did, and nurture it and bring it to the Lord, it can turn from a question into inspiration. So, as we are practicing asking effective questions, would you follow these steps? Prepare students to answer a question. Ask a good, clear question, like the ones we have in the lesson manual. Invite students by name to answer a question. Listen carefully so that you can understand and perceive. And then validate what the students are saying. Validation is one of those steps that we think we do more often than we do. Remember, it's an opportunity not just to validate a student response, help them to feel heard and seen and appreciated, but it's an opportunity for us to show love to students. Saying something like, "Wow, that is a great answer, Alan. I knew I could count on you for a wonderful insight." It's not just validating what they've said. It's an opportunity for us to show love. So, let's take a look at the lesson manual and see how we might do these steps. Notice that the lesson says, after students finished studying, give them an opportunity to share what they've learned by asking questions such as. So the preparation has already happened as they've spent time in the handout. So they're ready to answer this question. What did you learn from your study that you found helpful? Sarah, what do you think? Notice that I invited a student. I didn't just leave it open for any old student to answer. This is important for a couple of reasons. One, we're not a church of volunteers. We accept assignments or invitations. So we're inviting students to fulfill their role in gospel learning. And using a student's name is a wonderful experience. Think about the difference between having a validation, let's say, by someone saying, hey, that's a wonderful answer, or saying your name. Sarah, that's a wonderful answer. You can feel the difference. It's a reason why God uses our names when he talks to us. So invite a student by name. What did you learn? Sometimes as we watch our students, we'll even see those that are ready to respond, but maybe not willing to raise their hand or take that initiative. All right, when we do that, we've asked that question, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel on these questions. They're good questions. Just read the question as is. What did you learn from your study that you found helpful? Sarah, what do you think? Sarah gives her answer, and then we say, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you. What a great insight. And then move on. So, same with these questions. We want to keep practicing this. What was it like for Joseph Smith and other members who were asked to practice plural marriage? Alan, what do you think? All right, keep practicing. Look for opportunities to ask good questions. And this one, how did God help the saints with this difficult commandment? Let's say a student gives a simple answer. Well, he strengthened them. Wonderful. Tell me more about that. Don't forget, follow-up questions can help students to get more out of what it is that they're discovering. May the Lord bless you to have an amazing lesson. Remember that this is an amazing opportunity for you to be a valuable resource in pointing students toward the answers that they seek in this such an important and pivotal topic.